Bilingual Web Magazine. Dig Tokyo. Language and Education 15. American humor is about learning to enjoy being foolish. 1. The theme for the first episode of the new season was #April Fools. We featured many April Fool's Day tweets and talked about how the day is celebrated by telling lies, crafting hoaxes, and pulling pranks. Itazura, or itazura in Japanese. Footnote 1. About the difference between itazura and itazura. Currently, itazura is the standard spelling, but up until November 15, 1946, itazura was the norm. The former is modern kana spelling, gendaiteki kanazukai, and the latter is historical kana spelling, rekishiteki kanazukai. The shift occurred in post-war Japan when, under the occupation policies pursued by GHQ, the report of the United States Education Mission to Japan recommended that spelling be standardized and simplified. Also, itazura has two phonetic spellings using kanji, itazura and itazura. The former combines the characters for bad and play, and is often translated as prank or mischief. The latter means pointlessly or aimlessly, and perhaps the best example of the character being used is in the title of the 14th century Japanese collection of essays, Tsurezuregusa. The late Donald Keene sensei translated the title as Essays in Idleness. Side note, the Japanese word seito, student, does not mean to live idly. Rather, se in this context means inexperienced and still learning, while to means colleague or pupil. 2. In high school, I would ask classmates if they wanted some Japanese candy, and then place an umeboshi, Japanese salt plum, in their hands. My unsuspecting friends would pop the umeboshi into their mouths and pause for a split second before the color drained from their faces. The prank took advantage of the fact that I would regularly bring Japanese sweets to school, which my friends quickly learned were unusual looking but very tasty. One classic April Fool's Day prank is for all the students in a classroom to turn their desks around 180 degrees to face the back of the class before the unsuspecting teacher walks in. Another prank my generation, the first real digital generation, liked to pull was to quietly slip a USB receiver into the teacher's computer and then move the mouse cursor around during class. However, in recent years, more and more people seem to be voicing the opinion that the day should be scrapped. Their disillusion is understandable. Pranks and jokes often don't go over well as digital text, as the recipient has no facial or vocal cues from which to infer nuance or tone. Even if the sender meant it as a joke, we now live in a world where meaning well is, well, meaningless. Plus, with social media, lies and hoaxes can quickly spin out of control before you know it. What's more, people these days seem to have little respect for the spirit of April Fools. Instead of trying to pull off light-hearted pranks that are usually not at the expense of another, people mistake the day as giving them permission to prank away, without consequence or concern for the feelings of the pranked. April Fool's Day is also celebrated to an extent in Japan, where it's sometimes called Shigatsubaka, literally April Fools. Baka, of course, can be translated a number of ways. The most common is stupid, a word that refers to a lack of intelligence or common sense that people are born with. Then there's silly, which has connotations of absurd or boneheaded or immature. There's also fool, which refers not to intelligence, but the lack of an ability to make good decisions, judgments, and considerations. If someone tells you don't be stupid, they're suggesting you're not using your brain. Don't be silly is another way of saying no way or stop messing around. Don't be foolish is a way of suggesting that someone knows better and needs to be exercising better judgment. In terms of linguistic differences between different Japanese regions, in the Kanto region, baka often means silly or foolish, while aho is closer to stupid. Meanwhile, to people in the Kansai region, baka sounds like stupid, while aho sounds like silly or foolish. Asterisk. About the difference between baka and aho. Baka is the more commonly used term in the Kanto region, while aho is the more commonly used term in the Kansai region. In the Kanto region, baka has less aggressive connotations, while the less commonly used aho comes across like a strong insult. Conversely, in the Kansai region, aho has less aggressive connotations, while the less commonly used baka sounds like you're trying to start something. Meanwhile, in Aichi Prefecture, especially in the Owari region, based around the central city of Nagoya, older generations are probably more familiar with the term take. Side note, my mother, who is from the Mikawa region of Aichi, would use baka. Ideally, April Fool's is not just about making someone look foolish. Instead, it's about fooling someone so brilliantly that the victim is able to laugh at him or herself. In other words, both the prankster and the fool need to have a generosity of spirit and a sense of humor. The more elaborate and well thought out a prank is, the more the victim will have no choice but to acknowledge the effort. Me, on the other hand, back when I was a kid, I'd get furious or dejected after falling victim to a prank, and people would inevitably tell me to lighten up. In America, there's another word for people who are so serious or honest to the point of being foolish: a wet blanket. The essence of American humor is to enjoy being foolish. Although the current state of affairs in the US is anything but laughable, Americans don't like to stew in darkness. 3. Linen Shirt by Paul Stewart. Pink Candy Striped Jacket by Azabu Taylor. Red Corduroy Pants by Brooks Brothers. Poe Double Monk Shoes by Paraboot. Black Glasses by Zoff. Language and Education 15. American humor is about learning to enjoy being foolish. www.digtokyo.jp